Thanks for clicking on to the 26th edition of the Global Weather and Climate Report. A lot of things going on and a lot of extremes are going on at the moment. So I thought today would be a good day to look globally and see and look in a little bit more detail as to what extremes are going on around the planet at the moment. This is off Climate Reanalyzer site. This is the 2 meter temperature anomalies off the GFS database here. And we do have some quite significant extreme cold and warmth around the planet at the moment. We've got a lot of warmth across Canada, as you can see here, eastern United States, across Eastern Europe, central portions or northwest parts of Asia. Extreme warmth versus extreme cold, extending from parts of Siberia into the northern portion of China. We'll have a look at that in a little bit more detail shortly. Cold across the western half of the United States. West coast of Alaska cold versus eastern Alaska is warm. The UK at the moment now starting to see the cold shrink after a week of snow and cold. For some, colder than normal across France, warmer than normal across Siberia, northern portions of Africa, warmer than average. Much of China above average, as you can see here. India, cooler than normal. Much of Australia, it's been a cold past 12 months here, really, overall. South Africa and parts of northern South America is below average, as you can see here. This is the 2 meter temperature anomalies here. For the last 45 days, I would actually quite like to look at, from the 1st of December till now, but I can't do that. It's either 60-day increments or 45-day increments, and I thought, we'll look at the 45-day because it's quite interesting to see where we're at with regards to this winter. It has been an interesting winter, actually. Back and forth, we've had some extreme cold. We've also had some extreme mild conditions, especially across more southern parts of the British Isles. And, you can see here that much of Australia below average, much of Central and South Africa below average. The heart of Asia has seen a very, very cold past 45 days, which is quite interesting here. Largely warmer than average across North America, as you can see here. Interesting enough, despite the fact that we've had really extreme cold across parts of Siberia, the overall 45-day period does not really reflect that, if you notice, which is quite interesting. But let's have a look. Let's have a quick look at Europe actually and see what the past 45 days has produced. So, generally speaking, what stands out to me is the warmth has basically followed the long-term trend that we've seen in the last 12 to 18 months. Of course, it has been 2022, I believe, was the second warmest year on record for the continent. I could be mistaken about that, and if somebody wants to correct me in the comments, feel free to do that. But certainly it has been overall a very, very warm 2022, and the start 2023 has followed suit, really, despite the fact that we had a colder than normal December. Now, the interesting aspect is that much of Ireland and much of the British Isles, bar the south of the UK, has seen colder than normal conditions for the last 45-day period. So what does that tell me? It tells me that actually it has been a relatively decent winter when it comes to both cold and snow. It hasn't been, it has been a bit of a washout, in fact, really, especially across England and Wales, not so much across the north. But, fairly frequent bouts of cold coming in either from the northwest to the north has meant that overall it's actually been, we're still leaning cold in average across the northern half of the British Isles for the overall winter. I know this only goes back to 45 days. So that to me is quite interesting, actually. And the overall continent has been warmer than average. Remember what my forecast says. I did actually say that I think for the entire 90-day period would potentially be warmer than average. And the reasons why is we've got the overall climatic state, I think, that cannot be denied that we've had a warming trend. And I think despite the fact that we would see bouts of cold and snow relatively frequent, I always believed that this winter would wind up average to slightly above average in terms of the temperature here. So I've given my reasons why I think that would be the case, but there is always caveats to that, of course. And I still believe that February could be an interesting month. I still believe that we will have significant spells of cold based on everything that's going on, whether it be within the stratosphere or whether it be the Manchulian oscillation rotating through the various phases and whatnot. I did believe that the Pacific would be the main driver in terms of the overall, climatic situation this winter. And I think up until now it's been a pretty good call actually. But of course, it's a global weather and climate report. So let's have a look at what's been going on with regards to extremes over the last week or so here. And of course, always go to extreme temperatures around the world. Maximiliano Herrera, based in Costa Rica, has probably the best database on the planet when it comes to records, both weather and climate records, for almost every station on the face of the planet. So I always go to this guy for the figures. Fascinating stuff. If you happen to be on Twitter, give him a follow. But I want to start off by looking at Cuba. Interestingly, despite the fact that North America has been warmer than average overall for the past 45 days, we've seen exceptionally unusual cold conditions almost stretching into the deep tropics. Historic cold in Cuba. Lowest temperature today, plus 1.5 Celsius in one station, and that was only 0.9 Celsius off the official all-time low for Cuba. We also seen some pretty cold conditions across South Florida as well. Of course, you only have to go across the Florida Straits, which separates Florida, the United States, of course, from Cuba. But historic cold also in the eastern town of Guantanamo, with 9.9 Celsius at the airport. It's the lowest temperature ever recorded here. New record also for, I'm not going to even pronounce that, but interesting, 7.4 Celsius. And frosty conditions, a picture of frost on the grass here. Bear in mind where this is on the planet. So very, very interesting stuff. And we'll kind of skip through. Unusual cold actually for the Bahamas. Temperatures down to 10.5 Celsius at Nassau. Dominican Republic seeing record breaking cold as well, or near record breaking cold. Very interesting stuff actually. And we've got warm conditions southeast Spain. So I'm going to go back and forth a wee bit here. I do apologise for that, but look at these here temperatures into the 20s and across parts of Turkey. Eastern Europe, the warmth has been incredible. And of course, we started the month with incredible warmth in the central and western portions of the continent. Now we've shifted that warmth to the eastern portion of the continent. As the cold air comes south, quite often you get warmth flooding north downstream of that. Of course, minus 62.7 Celsius, all-time record-breaking cold in some stations in Siberia. Very impressive given the overall climatic situation at the moment, with arguably a warmer world overall compared to what it was a decade ago. What's interesting, and the take-home thing about this, is that we're still seeing exceptional cold in places that are exceptionally cold anyway. So that to me is very interesting here, that despite a warming overall world, folks, we're still able to achieve all-time record-breaking cold overall. So I think that is something worth paying attention to and worth really taking on board. So a town in Siberia recorded minus 62.7 Celsius. Yeah, that's Celsius, not Fahrenheit. It broke its all-time record, I think, a couple of times, and it was the coldest temperature anywhere in Russia at any time of the year since 2002. So that is very, very fascinating stuff. Myanmar, unusual cold, actually. Elevation 1,866 meters above sea level. Temperature dropped to -6. Myanmar, by the way, remember, is knocking the door of its neighboring Thailand. So this is the deep tropics. temperatures down into well below freezing. I know it's high up, but still nonetheless very interesting stuff. After warm spells during early January of a historic proportion, we're seeing China, the Koreas, Japan facing bouts of severe cold coming southbound. Of course, as we start to build pressure across the high latitudes, we're forcing the cold that we're seeing temperatures into the minus 60s across Siberia. We're seeing that getting pushed south, and I made mention of that last week in the Global Weather and Climate Report, that we would see extreme cold getting driven south over Asia. And we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail in a second here. But temperatures, remarkable temperatures into the low 20s in Romania. We're seeing temperatures around 18, 20 in Moldova, in Ukraine. So this is the temperature here. Insane warmth in Moldova with its warmest January day in history. So the warmest day ever recorded in Moldova, 18.1 Celsius, was recorded, breaking the previous record here. So that's in Moldova. North Macedonia, we're seeing record-breaking temperatures near 20 Celsius here. There's Nicaragua, where we're seeing temperatures unusual cold. So again, very extreme warmth, very extreme cold. Very interesting overall weather pattern across the planet here. High elevations, seeing record-breaking cold conditions here, as you can see. This is an interesting one here. It has been a very extreme 2023 so far, with incredible warm spells, but with a good share of cold events as well. Average-wise, Norilsk, I think that's the right pronunciation, in Russia, the world's most northern city, is so far 14 Celsius below average and 2 Celsius colder than its coldest January on record. So that is very, very impressive stuff as well. Going back to Europe, again, record warm in Ukraine here, record warm across parts of Argentina here. I'm trying to run out of time. I've got ideas, I've got thoughts of what I'm going to do in these videos, and I end up always running out of time. It's a bit frustrating, actually. So yeah, China has been one very fascinating one. The coldest temperature anywhere in China, minus 50.6 Celsius at Mohi, is that how you pronounce it? Recorded. It's the coldest temperature since February 1969. So again, despite it being a warmer overall planet, we are seeing incredible cold overall. Iceland, remember I made mention of the coldest December since 74. Now we're seeing very mild conditions as the jet stream gets forced north with that area of high pressure to the south over the British Isles here. Arctic oscillation, by the way, is actually going from negative back towards neutral here, if not even positive, which is quite interesting. The North Atlantic oscillation doesn't look, according to the GFS ensemble anyway, looks as if it's neutral to positive overall. Europe. Remember I showed you just in yesterday's video how Europe turns very cold early February? This shows you how back and forth the models are. So notice here, over the next couple of days, of course, the cold erodes over the UK, gets forced into the southwest. Very warm conditions, of course, eastern portions of Europe. That's going to start to ease off. But look at how much milder conditions get. Then we'll start to see a bit of back and forth as the Atlantic pattern rules towards the end of the very end of the month here. Then we've got a push of some pretty cold conditions actually off the Atlantic here. Why would that be the case? Well, you only have to look at North America. We're going to see a flood of very, very cold conditions over North America. Greenland really warms up. This is a 2 meter temperature normally, by the way, looking over the planet. I'm running out of time, so I'll try and be quick. But look at the GFS. It shows extreme cold coming into North America. Notice Europe isn't getting very cold, so we need to keep an eye on that here. But we get a lot of warmth built up over the top. Extreme cold into North America. That is going to eventually push colder off the continent, across the Atlantic, and into the British Isles here overall. Latest stratosphere situation here. We will look at that in tomorrow's video in a bit more detail. Out of time, lots going on. Subscribe to the channel if you already done so, and I'll see you again tomorrow, hopefully with more. Bye for now.